It is another episode of Say It Loud, y'all. You know my kids hate when I say that. And today we have am I saying it right? Rakim. How do you pronounce it?
Rakim.
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 Instagram famous, because I know you're Instagram famous, is how I found you. The insightful teacher. I was just telling Rakim how I found him. I don't know, because I don't usually follow teachers on Instagram, even though I am a teacher. But I came across his his talk, his Instagram live this past summer, and I was so pulled in. And if you know me and you know how bad my ADHD is, you know that is a really hard thing to do. But I actually did my evening walk and would not come inside until this talk was over. So it's probably good for me. I was so pulled in by the discussion and the people. And then I've been following and just looking at the work that you're doing behind the scenes. And I felt like you would be a perfect person to come on and talk to us about education, about Black and Brown students, about teachers and teacher burnout, and just life itself. So welcome, Rakim, for coming to Say It Loud.
Thank you for having me.
So can you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself so they don't think I'm the only one that's crazy?
In terms of being a teacher during this time period? No.
Yeah.
So Rakim, the insightful teacher. I am from Brownsville, Brooklyn. Brownsville never ran, never will. I've been teaching for the last 7 years. I taught 3 years of middle school in Brownsville by way of Teach for America. Then I've taught 4 years in the South. I've taught 4 years in the South Bronx as well. So this is my 7th year. I'm also an educational consultant and a certified life coach. And I just love, I love having intellectual conversation with the people and putting students in the forefront of everything I do. So it's good to be here. Thank you.
Can we just clap for the Black and Brown people doing what they do? I love the credentials. I love it. I love to celebrate that on this show. I'm like, yes. So we've been teaching about around the same amount of time. Shout out to you for Teach for America. I've actually been up there to their offices, and I know that program is very rigorous, but they spin out some good teachers. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah, some good Black and Brown teachers, I would say.
Yeah, they do. I've actually met some teachers Teach for America, and they're good people. They're dedicated to the work that they do. And it's really nice to actually know them and see that initiative and that energy in the people. So congratulations on that, on just being a part of that and being a life coach.
Yeah.
That's crazy. You're a teacher and a life coach.
Yeah, I coach folks on the weekend, so you'll see one of my posts saying, like, my last post, teachers need to start leaving schools that don't serve them. And then
Yes.
Another post would say something like, action cures fear, and how you need to take action on your life. So I have the Teacher Tuesday, which is for teachers, and, just moving our pedagogy forward, and just like everything they won't allow you to do in professional development. And then I have the Sunday where folks bring their goals and we work through them. And I just coach people for free on Instagram every Sunday at 9:30. So it's great.
Wow. How did you start the Insightful Teacher? What was the motivation behind that?
Great question. So my consulting work is around culturally responsive teaching, diversity, equity, inclusion, right? And project-based learning. I have a project-based learning certification from the University of Pennsylvania. So my school wanted me to do an anti-racist workshop, right, on anti-racism. And of course, this is after, the summer of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, right? And, I told them I didn't want to do an anti-racist PD or anti-racism, right? Because I felt that the only reason anti-racism became popular was it took a cop to have his knee on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Right. And it had to be televised beyond the world. But there was many people doing anti-racist work, right? W. Du Bois talked about anti-racism in Darkwater in the 1920s, right? Angela Davis talked about anti-racism, right? I have a book back here from 2005 talking about anti-racist work and what it means to be anti-racist. Bell Hooks talked about it, right? But it seems like once a Black person got assassinated by the police and it went viral, then white folks seem like they want to do something, right? And it's also the anti-racism that I've experienced in terms of it was mostly geared towards white teachers, white folks, right? And it allows them to escape. Like if you say anti-racism, it's like, oh, we're anti-racist. It's nice, it's comfortable, it's packaged nice for them. And my school is 99% Black and Latinx teachers and students. However, the leadership, the 1% of that 100% is on leadership, right?
Right.
So I told them I didn't want to do a conversation on anti-racism because I didn't think we're gonna miss the mark if we do that. And I don't feel like and Black people can't be racist because of like power and structural, systematic, all this stuff, right? So I was like, I would like to call the PD anti-whiteness, moving towards a liberatory pedagogy, because I see a lot of Black and brown folks when they're teaching and learning are in these spaces, they look at their ascension into the world as a proximity to whiteness. So they try to they duplicate white traditions, white cultures, white norms, and they force that upon our kids. So really, my thing was like, it's the pervasiveness of whiteness and what it means to try to be in proximity to whiteness. And at every point, we need to push back for it. So I go into class like this, and I dress in the hoodies and things of that nature, right? And this is how I dress for the class, because I'm always pushing back against that politics of respectability and whiteness. And they told me I could not call it anti-whiteness. I said, what?
But we could call it anti-racist? Yes.
They said you can call it anti-Blackness, you can call it anti-caring, you can call it anything you want. You just can't call it anti-whiteness. And I said, why not? And they said, because there's no research on it. And I said, yeah, there is research on it, but you may not be familiar with the research because the research is coming from Black scholars. But the only time research gets out there is when white folks, they decide to produce or publish a book like White Fragility. Not everybody want to listen, but if you look at the sources in those books, it's all from Black folks like Carter G. Woodson and Anna Julia Cooper, who was talking about this years before, that they only get cited, they're a footnote of history. There is not censored. So they pretty much told me like, no, I can't call it that. And they told me to change the name. And they gave me an ultimatum. And they told me either you change the name or you add a descriptor to it explaining what it was. And I'm like, that's what you come to the PD for, so I can explain what it is, right? I mean, and they pretty much said it wouldn't make people feel comfortable. So I didn't change it. And they took my name off of the professional development thing. They put it back, and we have not had one conversation about race this whole year because nope. Because I got some of the teachers together, about 25 teachers in the school. We drafted a whole statement of a list of demands, right? I used that moment where they like pretty much targeted me. And I used that moment to launch a list of demands. I was like, okay, see, this is why we need a Black Studies program in this school. You need equity training in the school.
Right.
You need anti-racist work for leadership. So I used that one moment to get more rights for others. And then I launched, that's what launched Insightful Teacher Tuesday. My bro Mario called me up and was like, yo, because I put it all in my stories about what was happening and everyone was like reposting. I went live on a Monday, at like 12 a.m. because I was tight. I was pissed off. It was like 9 people on there. I woke up, it's like 720 people reshared, like it just moved.
It's happening.
So on Tuesday, I did the Insightful Teacher Tuesday, and I learned that people want to learn about this critical pedagogy. People want this liberatory learning. However, their schools are blocking them too, right? The teacher training programs are not teaching it. No one's teaching it. So from that day on, I knew that was the missing link in the teaching system. And I said, I'm just going to bring it to the people for free. And I just, every Tuesday.
I think that's amazing. I think that you need to write the curriculum regardless. I've been teaching for the same amount of time as you. I totally understand where I've worked in schools, like I told you before we started, where I was the only pedagogue of color, right? So there was other Black people in the building, but not other Black teachers. Right? The paras, the office administration, those people, yes. But as far as teachers, licensed teachers, I was the only Black teacher in the school. I have been in schools now that are teaching anti-racist pedagogy and professional development. However, the school that is teaching that now is in a neighborhood and an area where there is predominantly Black and brown teachers. When I worked in the school where the administration and the teachers were predominantly white, they were not learning this. So now I'm sitting in PD and I'm like, you're teaching this to me and you're like, they're asking me questions like, how are you anti-racist? And I'm like, bro, like I'm every single thing that is what these people are living. You know what I mean? Like I have brothers, I have uncles, I have ex-husbands, I have children, I was a teen mom, I've had food, I've lived on food stamps, like everything that you're trying to say, don't be racist about, classist about, sexist about, whatever. I've lived in all of those situations, but the schools where we needed to have those discussions and where we needed to do that work were not introducing those things.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Right. And you would see Dr. Patina Love, she wrote We Want to Do More Than Survive. And she penned a piece about how like equity and reform or any movement in education doesn't come until white people feel comfortable. It comes off of white comfort, right? So they're pushing that forward, and it's really like, even if you look at the school systems, right, and you look at like even the sense of like no nonsense, right, this disciplinary school systems, right, they do that to Black and brown children. Their schools don't look like that, right? So it's
Montessori.
Huh?
I said their schools are Montessori. Yeah.
So what? It's a really way to control the movement and of black students, right? And I'm like, why do you feel that your kids get to be free, right, and move, but our kids need to be disciplined, right?
Right.
And I think that's the number one issue, right, in our schools, to where hey, you know, this is good for Black and brown teachers and Black and brown students, but somehow, you know, the folks who are storming the Capitol or storming our school buildings never happen to get the training, right? And that's the issue there, right? It's like, no, anti-racism and is not for folks who teach Black students. It's for white teachers who teach white students predominantly, because those are the folks who need to teach. Like you can tell by the events of the storming of the Capitol that white folks are not getting the education that they need, right? And it's like, you want to bring all this education stuff to our communities. It's like, no, you really need the education. What we need.
We're not the ones that are. We're not the ones that are doing it. We're not being racist to each other. We're not killing each other. We're very, I mean, actually, if you teach in a community of Black and brown students, you know there's a lot of culture. There is a lot of ethnicities. There is a lot of understanding and cross, you know, understanding. But you're right. It needs to be taught in those places where they need to grow students up in multicultural and diversity, so they understand when they leave school how to act, how to behave, how to interact with people outside of, you know, that look like them. That's one. But I also think, especially with what happened with the Capitol recently, you know, having Donald Trump as the president, I think there's also a lot of people, including educators, who will say, well, I'm not racist. And they will outright say that. Right. And I believe in your mind, you do believe that. But then you're also looking at this student or these children or these people or where you work as a place where, you know what, it's not really equal to me. Yeah. You know, yes, I'm not racist. I want to be there. I want to help, but also having that kind of idea of like, but I'm not them. Right. And so it might not come out as blatant racism. Like, no, you're not going to mistreat someone, but your ideologies and your ideas about who you are and who you are to them is not equal either.
Yep. Exactly. And I tell, you know, I tell folks, right, like I believe all white folks are racist and all men are sexist. Right. So that's just like period. Right. That's what I teach. So since you know, because you're born and all folks are born with white privilege, and then we have male privilege. Right. So like so our job, right, and that's why I try to get it to white folks, is like, no, I understand my male privilege. So my job is like, since I understand my male privilege, is like, hey, how do I use my positionality, right, to fight for, stand up, and elevate Black and brown women, right? Like, how do I do that, right? And same thing with white folks, right? It's like, okay, all right, you're not racist. Let's for argument, let's throw that out the window, right? Even though I think you are, let's throw it out the window, right? You benefit from the white supremacist system, your privileges, right? And you have earned, folks, see, white folks they acknowledge the unearned, they acknowledge the privileges, the unearned privileges, but that privilege also comes with a debt that you have, right? So it's like, no, you that came off of, you know. So I really think in our school systems, right? And even when we do talk about these conversations, they're like, you know, like once every 3 months. It's like a big deal. And I really don't think schools know how to have the conversation, right? So that's why I did the Insightful Teacher Tuesday, and even like the book club that I run now, like, you know, I have all teachers are involved in it. We just finished reading Black Appetite, White Food by Jamila Scott. We're reading Dr. Bettina Love's We Want to Do More Than Survive. So it's like those type of things that I know that teachers need to know when they're, especially teachers who are educating Black and brown students, that they don't teach you in your certification programs.
Yeah, no, they don't even touch on it in certification programs, to be totally honest. It's not a requirement to like look at multicultural. And then, you know, and then for me as a SPED teacher, it drills down to so many other areas, you know, because I look at special education and that's my area of expertise. And I look at the numbers and I look at the pipeline to prison. And then I go, you made me learn all of these things. And then I look at a kid's case and I'm like, I don't see any of the 7 certified reasons why this child should be in special education, you know. And then, you know, so it's big, and then it funnels down. And in some cases it's bigger than where people even realize what's happening to their kids in their own schools, you know, and who's teaching them and how they're teaching them and where those ideas are coming from and how it happens.
It's I've said that if we really look at like special education and like English language learners in our schools, and it was like, hey, these are the services that people are students are supposed to get, and these are the services they're getting, 95% of schools will be shut down.
I will tell you that I've been in places where they were like, oh, we just don't have the manpower, keep going. And I'm like, I'm not signing that. I'm not signing that. Because
Yep.
you put me, I'm not signing that. And I think, and I've also been in schools where I wanted to say, you know what, if somebody's mother came in right now and actually fought this, you guys would be in big trouble. But
Yep.
we prey on the fact that a lot of parents don't know. They take the teachers and the school's word for it. They don't have an advocate. So they
Yep.
kind of just go along with whatever the school says, not knowing that like your students not getting the things that they need or not placed in the setting that they're supposed to be in.
Yep. And it's so important. Like parent advocacy is so important, because if parents don't step up, or parents don't know, then the school gets to railroad their kids. You know,
Right.
I have some kids, and like they come to me in the 10th grade and they have like a 3rd grade reading level.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
How did this happen?
How did this happen? Right? That, you know, and that's a form of genocide. Right? And we don't look at it, right? And I'm looking at it, and it's like, and I look of like, okay, you're supposed to have a one-on-one power. You're supposed to be push out and pull in, right? You're supposed to have all these services. And I'm like, okay, you're not getting the services here. So you really, I'm sure you didn't get them in middle school, right? Because usually what they do is they focus on behavior more than the student academics. And what happens with that, and when I tell folks what happened with that is the issue with that is, I see when I see students acting up in class, I'm always like, okay, the work is either too hard or too easy for you. That's the first thing I think of. And I'm like, okay, hey, yo, you know, we can ask for help in this class. If you don't have access to the material, let me know, right? But you don't have to like act up, right? Like we don't have to do that here. Like, you know, like just ask for help. Like that tells those skills of teaching them to advocate for themselves, ask for help, or tell me, hey, the work is too easy, right?
I need
And then
something
when
else.
I say the work is too easy, I say, what's the evidence of it? Finish it. If it's easy, then do it. If like, you know, so it's like those conversations that I have with kids. And then some students is like, you know, it's like so much. Like I would have to like, all right, come during lunch and we're going to sit down and we're going to work on this. Come after school, I'm going to sit down and we're going to work on this. Here's my number. You can take a picture of the question you're having issues with, send it to me, and I will help you with it, because they're not getting the services. And even though that's outside of my realms, I just wish like the school administration and places I've been cared more about the kids, right? In terms of just making, you know,
what happens is we tend to kind of group kids together based on their behavior. I think a lot of times they kind of get pushed to this side when there's a behavior issue. In my personal experience, and you know, I'll knock on wood, those very same kids I tend to work most closely with, I never have behavior issues with them. They mad cool, they mad smart. They just need someone that they want to learn from, that makes them feel empowered. And so those very same kids, I've always had the kids in my classroom where they can't go to lunch and they got to go sit in Miss Myri's classroom. And 3 days in, they're like, Miss Myri, we don't want to leave. Can we stay? You know, but I think it's about relationship building with students, because you can't learn. Kids are not going to learn from somebody they don't like.
Period.
You know, and so if you're not creating that opportunity for a relationship, and kids are not, I tell people this all the time, kids are not stupid. When you're faking it, they know. And so when the teachers go in there and they're trying, like, I don't understand why you don't talk to me, and I don't understand, and it doesn't come across natural, then that kid is gonna be like, nah. You know what I mean? Like, nah, I'm not, and they won't learn from you.
I tell folks, I've never had, I mean, there's students, I mean, misbehavior to the school standards, but like, you know, I was expelled from the 7th grade. Like, there's nothing, I was like, there's nothing you can do in this class that I have not done, right? Like, there's nothing, but I knew that the classes were not speaking to me. Like they weren't
Right.
speaking to me. The only class I passed in the 7th grade when I was expelled was history, and I teach history. Only the only class I passed, but it wasn't that
Yeah.
I couldn't do the work. I just was like, this is not it for me. Like I was in a
Yeah.
gifted school. I'm like, this
Yeah.
is not it.
You were bored. That's what it was.
I was really
Yeah.
bored.
What
So
do you
bored.
think? What do you think about? Let's tap into the teacher burnout, because
Okay.
just be feeling like that sometimes. What do you
Uh-huh.
think? What do you think about the teacher burnout, especially now during COVID?
Whew.
Yeah, who you telling?
Folks think because we are working virtually, or some folks are working hybrid, they are like, oh, schools need to open. It's like, no, schools are in session. The schools are in session, right? And it's actually harder to teach virtually than it's to teach in person. Like, this is hard, right? And I'll tell you something about teaching. I posted today, teachers need to start leaving schools that don't serve them. It's like a 711 likes.
Yeah, I'm about to go comment, like, do my hands up, clap, all that kind of stuff. I like my school. I love my school. I think my principal is great. I love the school. I will just say this, like, teaching was hard before.
Yeah.
Teaching was hard before. I've been in schools where they straight throwing computers out the window. You know what I mean? Like, we don't need it. Throw it out the window. So,
wow.
I've had, knives, pepper spray, fire extinguishers go off, all of that.
Wow.
But this legit has been the hardest year ever.
To
the point where I was like, I don't know how much, like, I don't know if this is going to be till 65, 72 or whatever that is, because, that's a long time from now to commit to this. And y'all all know I got commitment issues. So I don't know, man. I really feel like this was challenging.
Yeah, and I think what you see with the pandemic is like some teachers are being forced to go in schools that are unsafe, right?
Yeah.
One, and really most, if you look at the landscape, right? A lot of teachers are being forced to go in schools that are unsafe, but most of them are being forced to go in schools to prepare students for a standardized test, right? I don't
know why we're still even. Yeah, I don't really agree with that. I feel like if we haven't been able to teach the way we would normally be teaching all year, then how are we supposed to give standardized tests? How are we supposed to monitor a standardized test in a virtual space? And I honestly feel like if all students don't have the same resources, then it's, I mean, if you want to know my honest truth, I've never really liked the standardized test to begin with.
No, I agree.
I've always been against it, especially as a special education teacher, because if I have students in 8th grade reading on a 2nd grade level and I give them an 8th grade test, what do you think the results are going to be? Okay.
Right there.
On top of that, let me just vent my teacher stuff to you. And on top of that, now you want to tie my evaluation to that student's progress when you damn well know they read on a 2nd grade level or 3rd grade level and they have dyslexia. So how am I supposed to give them an 8th grade test and show that they're working and made progress when clearly they have a disability, and you're going to tie me to that? Like, I just don't understand. That's like asking a fish to climb a tree. Like, what do you want me to do with that information?
And that's how a lot of teachers are being evaluated, right? From the test, right? So it's right. And most schools, if Biden is saying that if schools don't give the test, they're not going to get funded, right? So it's all the nature of that. But schools need the money the most, right? Schools in the inner city communities, right? Because like I've been like consulting at some schools where like half of their budget come from the parents. They live in communities with like $1 million homes, and those property taxes go and support the schools, right? So there are schools that don't take standardized testing. They do portfolios, they do a lot of stuff, but the schools in our neighborhoods are standardized testing, and I'm like, what standard can we really have? What standard can we really have in the global pandemic? Like, what is the standard?
I don't know.
There is none.
But let me just tell you, on top of having a standardized test, which I don't agree with, when you
Mhm.
sit down and read the test, and I teach in urban schools, I've always taught in urban schools. When you
Uh-huh.
sit down now and you read the test and
Uh-huh.
you say, okay, even my best level student on
Yep.
par, 90s in my class, read this excerpt of your English test and answer
Mhm.
the questions. You're asking my students to read a document and use, things in their life to make a connection to it, talking about like wheelbarrows and grass and things that they are not living in, so they
Yeah.
do not have any connection to this text. So now you're asking them to read something and like little things like, Miss Mari, what's a wheelbarrow?
Yep.
Because I
Yep.
live in an urban area. There's subways, there's, policemen, there's taxis, there's no wheelbarrows. What is that?
Yep.
So
Yep.
we're also giving these kids a test and we're asking them to answer questions and they have no background knowledge, right, of any of the things that you're asking them, so that they can connect it to even say, oh wow, now I understand. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So it kind of almost feels like where is this test coming from?
Yep. And I mean, is testing is a $1.9 billion industry,
Yeah.
right? So that's what it is, right? And I think that if we really see the issue with standardized testing, right? It comes from standardized policies. When you standardize policies, you standardize testing, then you standardize administration in schools and school districts. You standardize how teachers should teach, and you standardize how students are taught. Therefore, you can standardize behavior. So then when you standardize testing and standardize everything, then you get to say what's good or what's bad, what's right and what's wrong, right? And therefore you standardize, pretty much standardizing white supremacy in schools, right? And then you standardize how students should act and how they should show up, how they should dress, how they should move, how they should walk, how they should do these things, what's acceptable, what's respectable, what's not, right? And then if a student goes against that, right, if they come, right, there's students who couldn't graduate because they had locks in their hair, or girls who had braids in their hair at some
Mm-hmm.
institutions, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you do that stuff, all right, all of that stuff, there was a young girl who was on, I think, probation, and then she got sent to jail because she didn't turn her Zoom work, right?
Oh
That
yes.
all contributes to the
That's
school of prison.
ridiculous though. That is just like the little kid playing with his thing and the teacher said she felt threatened. I'm like, yo, he's playing with a doll he was doing some little kid thing that little kids do.
Yep,
And the teacher supposedly felt threatened. I'm like, through the computer?
yep. That
How is
that's
he
the
gonna
thing,
who knows
right?
about computers? How are you gonna hurt you through a computer?
But you gotta understand, that same pop mentality where we see folks are getting like shot in the streets, black and brown folks getting shot in the streets because a cop assumed, like, in his mind. That's the same thing that teachers do in the classroom,
Yeah.
right? They make judgments and prejudgments, and some of the rules are just not fair. Like, I've known students who, if you tell a student to do something, they'd be like, why? Why do I have to do that? And you also be like, automatic detention for your response.
Right.
And they'll go straight to detention. And then they go to detention. And then something that could have been like, a conversation or a quick, like, do we have to get into this right now? Like a quick thing was like, it turned there in detention. Now they're in the dean's office. Now they don't know why they're in the dean's office because they didn't get no explanation. And then the dean, they getting into the dean. And then the dean was like, you know what? The last time you was in here, I'm tired of you talking back to teachers. You're suspended. Then they're suspended. They lose it, and it's just like it's just a
It's a
slippery
slippery
slope.
slope. Yeah.
Uh huh. Yeah.
But I'm gonna speak on the teachers though. Sometimes the teachers be
Mhm.
dragging it. You know what I
I
mean? You
agree. Yeah,
have to
yeah,
understand the kids that you are working with. You have to, I
yeah.
teach middle school too, just like you. You have to understand that they are going to now be vocal. They're not babies anymore. They're going to
Yep.
advocate. themselves. They're
Mm-hmm.
going, if they feel like you wronged them, they're going to let you know. And we
Yep.
can't celebrate when they advocate for themselves, but then be mad when they tell you like, no, this is what happened, or this is not
Yep.
what happened, or this is how I feel, or this is how you made me feel. It's like you said, we've become so accustomed that if you don't do it my way, if you don't sit, be quiet, face forward, do your work my way, then you have to
Mm-hmm.
get out, or you're going down this slippery slope. Instead of just saying, again, I've had students that say that, and I'd be like, I'll tell a kid in a minute, take the pass, go for a walk.
Yep. 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 Yep.
Go
Yep.
get some fresh air. You want
Yep.
to go work in the hallway? Okay, I'll go sit, sit with you in the hallway. Maybe you need to just take a break. Maybe you need to but there are people that are also, I've seen teachers also like egg on students. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I've seen it. Like every day this one kid comes and every day you pick on that same one. Like
Yep.
I've seen it happen. Like every single day you pick on that same kid, and then you expect them to just kind of like sit there and take that. And at some point, that child's gonna get frustrated.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? And I think one thing that we have to do, and I talk about this a lot, is you have to decenter yourself from the middle of the classroom, right? Like most teachers think, oh, you need to turn this in this work because I said so. It's like, no, like honestly, if we're really 100, like we work for the students. We work
Right.
for the students, we work for their families.
Yeah.
That's what we work for, right? Like I tell my principal all the time, like I don't work for you.
Right.
I work for the students.
It's true.
So
It's true.
but yeah.
I think that a lot of times we don't pay attention to that. We kind of
Mm-hmm.
think that the kids got to do whatever we tell them to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't give them a space to kind of move outside of that structure either. And
Yeah.
while I'm a big advocate that kids do need structure, you have to understand what kind of kids you're structuring. I think that's the thing too. Like you have to know who that student
Yep.
is. Not every single time. There's certain kids that they'll bark and you could bark back, and then there's certain kids you cannot bark back. And you
You're
have
not.
to know
You're not.
who
Yeah.
those kids are, and you have to know who those kids are not. Like I had a student once, I was like, I'm a tough teacher, and I was like, you can't go there with this kid because they're gonna take it there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You gotta
Mm-hmm.
know when, as an adult, to say,
Yep.
yes, I could do that, and no, I can't do this. And I think sometimes we have this power struggle and we want to hold on to power so much that
Yep.
we feel like we can't allow the kid to just be who they are in that space.
Yep. Yep.
I
And
also feel like there's times where I have dealt with teachers I've had that power struggle within the classroom, and 9 times out of 10 they're teachers that don't look like me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been hard for me too, because it's like, well, the kids are working with you and you're nice to them and everything seems okay. But I've had a teacher flat out say like, and I'm a co-teacher, so I push in and I pull out. I've had a teacher flat out say like, don't talk to her. Tell the kids like, don't talk to her. I'm talking, don't talk to her.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had kids turn around and be like, you gonna let them talk to you like that? You gonna let them talk to you like that? So there it's bigger than it looks at times.
Yep. And then if you went and pressed that teacher, right, it's like, don't ever disrespect me like that in your life, right? Like
I left the room and I was like, I'll deal with it later, because if I'm not gonna put on a show in front of the kids, but I had to leave, and then I was like, well, I'll deal with it later. But that was me being a bigger person, because I really didn't want to, but I was like, you know what? But then again, you have to think about this. Me being a woman of color, and I can tell you this, going to graduate school and in my graduate programs, there was minimal amount of people of color.
Yep.
Very minimal amount of teachers of color, and definitely not in my age group.
Yep.
If there was a teacher of color, she was, my mom's age. You know what I mean? So there was not, even going through the programs that I have been in, there just is not a lot. There's just not enough teachers of color, like even in the program, let alone. So when they say they don't hire enough Black teachers, part of me was like, well, they wasn't in school with me for them to even get hired.
Right. My first year of teaching, I was the only Black male at my school. The only one. And like, even though I was like Teach for America was like, oh, this is the most diverse core. And I was like, when I went through, and I was like, there's like 10 brothers here. This is diverse. I wonder what it looked like 10 years ago. But the thing is, right, the teacher training programs are an issue, right? One, teacher training programs are an issue. Two, we got to look at this, right? And this is most folks don't come into teaching because of like we're not valued. Our the amount of work that we do and the amount of pay does not add up.
Who
Right? It does not add up.
I made way more money when I was in mortgages and radio than I make as an educator. And I work twice as hard. So you got to understand it from an everyday person. Sometimes it don't feel like it's worth it. I'm gonna be honest, because it's like I worked a 9 to 5 and I made double what I was making now. And when I was done at 5 o'clock, I was done until I showed up at my desk the next day. Now I make half the money, and after my contracted hours, I still have to go home and like do whatever it is you asked me to do. Plus, there's that social emotional component that goes with it that people don't understand, you know. And half the things I do as an educator, I don't even tell nobody. I had a student one time who was on medication, and I knew he wasn't taking his medication in the morning because every time he came to my class, he was all over the place. And so I know, and I called his mother. She said, I sent it in his pocket. So I asked him, why are you not taking your medicine? He said, because I'm supposed to take it with food. You know that I went to Costco and I bought a case of water. This was for summer school too. I bought a case of water and a box of granola bars, and I kept them in the back of my car. And every day, in the days I didn't have something, I went to Dunkin' Donuts and got myself something, and I would buy him a donut or a bagel so that when he came to my class, I never tell nobody that. I never tell anybody. I just do it. I've been out with my kids, and I used to have that app Remind on my phone. Now because I couldn't take the emotional like stress that it gave me. I had a student text me about 7, 8 o'clock at night while I'm eating with my own kids, and they're like, I'm in the hospital. And I said, why are you in the hospital? And she told me earlier in the day she was going to get into a fight. And I told her, don't fight. You don't know who stole your money. Don't fight. She was like, no, I know who it is. I said, you don't know who it is. You don't know that for sure. Apparently, she didn't listen to me and she got into a fight. This kid texted me 8 o'clock at night. I'm in the hospital. I'm like, well, what, you know, like all the mom in me, the grandma in me, the teacher in me is like, I can't leave this kid. Like, who are you with? All right. Well, do you need me to, you know what I mean? So a lot of people don't understand. Like, I can't knowingly leave a child in that situation. So a lot of people don't understand the emotional component that comes with this job. It's not just like I leave my job and that's it. It's like, all right, this kid is like, I'm collecting dresses, I'm buying stuff. Like, it's not what people think it is.
Yep, it's not. And like, I have students, you know, from 5th grade till now. Like, I'm in high school right now, but like, I have every one of my students for the next 7 years are graduating, right? And I, I've been to students like birthday parties and like it's all of that, right? Like even like even like students getting to trouble, right? My students know, like, if any trouble comes upon you, they know to have my number. Like, all right, let me go and get you. Like, but yeah, folks don't really understand that. And folks are like, oh, why don't you just shut it down? And it's like, that's the thing. It's like that obligation that we feel as a teacher.
I feel a sense of guilt. Like, I feel guilty. Like, I can't knowingly like leave any human being, particularly a child, in that situation. So whatever the problem is, you're still gonna do whatever it is you can do to help somebody be better or help their situation. So it's tough work. I do think that teacher burnout is real. I think that I think a lot of people of color don't come into this field because for the amount of work that it is and the pay and what it takes to do it, they're like, I could just go do something else, right? It's like, if I'm going to spend this long in school, I'll be a lawyer. If I'm going to spend this long in school, I'm going to be a doctor. If I'm going to spend this long in school, I'm going to go do business. So I think that's why we don't have the number of color, teachers of color in in the pool to even pull from, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is. It would be interesting to pull some data on that, but I think that people at that level of education would just be like, "Well, I'm just going to go do something that's going to reap me more benefit."
Yeah. And I think like, we talk about teacher recruitment, but the issue is like they the schools can't even retain the black teachers they do have. Right?
No,
Like you can't even retain us, right? And I think after this year, it's full on exodus.
yeah.
I promise you. It like well, I will put money on it that folks are leaving the profession because of how folks are treated during this pandemic. Right?
Yeah.
It was diabolical, right? It started as, teachers are the heroes and all this other stuff, and then get your behind back in school, you know.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
tell folks I don't blame anyone. I'm 1 foot out the door. I don't
Yeah.
blame anyone
Same.
who
Same.
wants to leave.
I felt like I felt like it was teachers are heroes in the beginning, and then over time this last year I felt like I was treated like a highly paid babysitter, and it made me feel like the work that I did in school, the sacrifices that I made, the amount of money that I spent to get this education and this
Mhm.
license to do this work really didn't matter. It was
Yep.
more about being available to babysit your child because you didn't want to and needed to go back to work. It wasn't about the education, it wasn't about the knowledge, it wasn't about the dedication. It was simply, I need a place to put my child. And I think for me as an educator, it made me feel like I wasn't valued. It made me
Yep.
feel like the work that I did wasn't valued, and yeah, that's pretty much how I felt about that.
Yeah, we had a chance to really like reimagine like education and to like think of something new. I felt like we were in a perfect situation. So what would actual wraparound services look like around the family, right?
Mhm.
If the kids are at home. Like this is the first time we like, yo, the student, the parent, like everyone's in one space and they're in the community. Like what would it meant? What would it have looked like if we would have just took a more holistic way to teaching and learning, right? We could have the government could have gave like parents extra subsidies to keep the kids home, right? Like until this thing was over. Could have got a COVID check, a kid check, another check, right? Like the government should have took care of parents, right? It
Right.
was the government's responsibility to make sure that like parents and students they had that, right? But there is like, why do teachers always have to be a band-aid for societal issues, right? And I understood like, hey, I understood when they were talking about, hey, we should. They was like, hey, we need to put kids in the school because schools are the safe. They have the resources there,
Oh
and
yeah, I
it's
remember. What
like,
about the kids that can't be home because they're being abused? What about the kids that can't be home because there's no food? What about the kids
mm-hmm,
that can't be home because they don't have medical care? And I'm just thinking to myself, like I get it, but I also think
mm-hmm.
like that then y'all got to work on what's going on at home, right?
And it's like the question is always on like the subject, the teacher, what does it mean? It's like no, the question really should be is why those opportunities and resources aren't in the communities to begin with.
Right.
That should why like school is not going to help this issue. If this is the
No.
issue,
Yeah, I totally
why
agree.
why is it not
Yeah,
there to begin with? Even if you
right.
throw kids in school, you still have an issue.
Right. And that's what I was going to say. Even if the kid is at school until 3 o'clock, when they go home, that issue is still there. So what are you guys going to do about that? They still don't have food. They're still being abused. They're still, how are you? Because like, I get it. School's the safe haven only for 8 hours.
On for 8 hours, right?
Only for eight
Mm.
hours. What happens when that 8 hours is over? You cannot put that on the and that's part of the reason why the educational system is like at, on a board when it gets really weak and it's about to crack in the middle. That's why
Yep.
our education is in that system, because you just keep piling things on. Like, okay, so we got to teach the kids, and we got to teach their manners, and we got to make sure they get all their needs, and we got to make sure that they eat, because there's nowhere, like, they're giving out free food because there's no food in the house, and they don't get medical care. So we got to make sure that we got nurses on staff. And now this has become almost a place where, like, even for parents, where we don't have to parent our children. We're just going to school. And at school, they're supposed to take care of everything. We're going to make sure we have a dentist. We're going to make sure we have a nurse. We're going to make sure that they're eating. We're going to make sure that their social emotional needs are met. And then somehow along the line, it's no longer just about the education.
And what I tell parents, really, like, if school is the place that you are looking, like the sole place that you are looking for your child to get an education or to learn these skills, you have already failed your child. Already failed them, because there's no way, like, even the best schools, there is no way that children can get all that they need in the school. That there's no way, right? Yes, there should be responsibility for the teacher. Yes, there's responsibility on the school, but like what I say, Carter G. Woodson, he talks about this. He wrote The Miseducation of the Negro. He said there are two educations that you can give someone, right? One which they are given, and one in which they give themselves. By far, the one that they give themselves is a greater education. So what I would like parents and both teachers, but parents have to teach students how to get how to think for themselves, right? How to get the resources and education, how to advocate for themselves, but also how we looking at different entities outside of the school building to, like, right now is a virtual, like, I'll tell parents, like, what virtual programming are you putting students in, right? They're going to be on internships, right? Like, what are those wraparound services that are going to allow the students to fully grow? Because you look for, the school is not going to do it. Right. The school is not going to. I'm one teacher in my building, right? Even if you're like,
we don't have the resources.
We don't.
Even if you wanted to, because you come on, that first year or 2 years of teaching, you go in gun ho. You know what I mean? Like, my first 2 years, I was at Kinko's at 5:30 in the morning. You couldn't tell me nothing. You know what I'm saying? I was putting my teacher shoes on. I had my teacher bag. You go 110% hard.
Yeah, we do.
You just a hot mess of, like, energy, because you want to be so good, and you think like you got your teacher superhero hat on.
Change the world.
You want to change the world, and then you it's slowly you realize, you're like, dang. I don't have the resources. We don't have money. I'm getting shut down for trips. We can't, you know what I mean? Anyway, I can't help this kid, and people don't realize that. People don't realize that we just don't have those resources that we need to kind of meet the needs of everyone. And so parents have to, I think, your best, any kid that needs to learn gonna have to learn at home. It doesn't matter what I'm teaching at school. It doesn't matter what their grades are at school. They're going to be a better human being if they are learning at home. And just in simple things, excuse me, like letting them think for themselves. I mean, so many kids now, and they can't think for themselves. What do you want to eat? Where do you want to go? How do you find the answer to something? Like, if you could download the app and play the game, then you could figure out how to do this, right? And I see kids almost, and it's a different time period, because when I was a kid, I had to go to the library and, like, look up stuff. I had to open the book. I'm like, y'all got everything right at your fingertips, and you still, Miss, that's work. And I'm just like, what? You have everything right in front of you. It can't get any easier than this. No, what is the issue? But I definitely think that comes from home too. Like, just, back in my day, if you say you're going to call my mom, I was scared.
Scared.
I was scared. Because my mom would take her slipper off. She'll throw it like a boomerang. It would hit me and go back to her foot. You know what I mean? So now you tell a kid, I'm going to call your mom. They be like, I'm going to call her first.
Yep. I'm going to text her. Pull out the phone. Ma.
See, she's about to call you, but I didn't do it. Like, what?
Now, you you know what I'm seeing at the high school kids, and I just want to say this one thing to parents, and I've seen this, right? We have to get better saving plans for our kids to go to college or whatever they want to do, right? Like I'm seeing this is my first year graduating seniors, and I'm seeing kids get into Howard and Spelman and schools like they want to go to, but then they have to take out a Parent Plus loan, right? And then the parent has to decide whether they have to take out a loan or not.
Yeah.
And I'm like some kids, I'm looking at it, and this is just me from I don't have kids, but I'm looking at it, it's like, you knew since this kid was born like that, you wanted the kid to go to college, right?
Yeah.
We want kids to, right? You are like, you wanted to go to college, right? you know, and then you saw them in elementary, and they were at the top of their class. Then you saw them in middle school, and they were going, and then, right? They need money to go to school. Not every kid's gonna get a scholarship. Not every kid's gonna get a great. Oh, my baby's good. No, your baby's not. No, they're not. They're not. They're not.
I mean,
they're not.
You could, but let's keep it 100 because this
Yeah.
is big for me setting my daughter, and I'm glad you brought this up. My listeners are usually between 35 and 44. You have kids that are getting ready to go to college or preparing, and I do think people of color are not financially prepared because in life we're just not financially prepared. Period. But we have to do better at pulling that together. And yes, my daughter went to school, and we were able to figure it out. She was able to become. You know, we got really lucky. Like she went to NYU. We were able to have her as a resident advisor, and she did mission and all those kinds of things. But and then before that, I was like, nah, you're gonna go to SUNY or CUNY, and you know what I mean, figure it out from there. But we have to, as parents, better educate ourselves. One, better prepare.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like we cannot depend, like you just said, on everybody getting scholarship. And I will tell you, my daughter got a scholarship to NYU, and it sounded like a lot of money, $25,000. But when school was $63,000 a year, $25,000 scholarship is not going to help you. I was like, sweetheart, this car money. How am I supposed to? I said, 4 years of this my house. How are we supposed to do this? And I don't think that we need to put ourselves in situations, one, where we're not dependent on sports. And while I love sports, I just had a coach on my show this week too, who was like, not every kid is going to get a full ride to college. Like Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. He went through the numbers. He was like, it's only like 3,300 kids in the whole, like he literally broke down the stats. He was like, out of how many million kids? Like that the idea of that is just not enough, and it's almost unfair to our students, because not everybody's going to play football or basketball or run track. So what happens to the musicians and the artists and the business people and the math people? Like, as parents, we have to start being more serious if this is what we want for our children. And if your first kid don't go, then that's fine, but then prepare for the next kid that you have, you know, because the hope is somebody's going to go. So at some point, you have to be prepared to put your child in that better situation so that they can get that higher level education. And I'm at the point, and I'm going to keep 100 because you know how I do on my show. Not knowing anymore is not an answer.
It's not. That's so good.
I don't want to hear what I didn't know. You, the same way you look up sneakers and t-shirts and clothes and cars and vacations and whatever else you Googling on your phone, is the same way you need to put that same energy into preparing for your child to go to school, whether it's looking up financial aid packages, EOP, you know, that $100,000 that they have in New York State now, whatever it is, you need to be spending your time doing that work for your child.
Or right, and on that, and on top of that, and I did the numbers, right? I was like, yo, if you save $50 every 2 weeks or $100 a month, right, for a child until they're 18, just $50, right, every 2 weeks, you would have $21,600, and that. Like, even if they don't want to go to college, like, here's the 21,000, go start a business, right? Go do what you need to do it. And I was like, right, we find, and this is the thing, right? And I had to really think about this, right? We find money when it's time to bail someone out of jail. We find it, right? We
Right.
find money for that funeral when the folks didn't have insurance.
We'll go fund me for that.
We find money for it, but it seems like when it comes to college or academic stuff, we can't find the money. And we have to start looking at some things like between like it's because that thing, like, yes, college is not for everyone, but it's life and death for some kids, right? And I know that I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't make that journey and just find my own way, right? That's really that financial literacy in college is so important. Like, if I can stress that enough, like, it just needs to happen. There are kids who can't go to college.
Yeah, and I had a student one time, he just flat out told me he's not going.
Mm-hmm.
He was in 8th grade and I was teaching social studies and English, and he said he's not going. And I said, why? What do you mean? Like, why are you not going? How do you know that? And he was
Mm-hmm.
like, my mom can't afford to send me to college. And so if your child has this idea in their head from now,
Yep.
how do you think they're going to flourish academically? Because now you're just basically not, in his mind, is like, it's not that serious. It doesn't matter,
Mm-hmm.
if I do well or I don't do well. I'm not participating in certain things anyway. And I think that's unfair to take away from a child, because this kid does have the academics and he does have the talent where he's quite capable of going. And I had to sit with him and I'd be like, well, there's other options. Like, there's different programs available. There's different, but a lot of students don't know that. So if your child's walking around with this mentality and you haven't had a conversation with them to prepare them for whatever it is that you guys need to do, then you're kind of almost in a way robbing them of even that experience. And when my daughter went, I told her, like, I don't, she had to pick a major, and I was like, I really don't care what it is. And she was like, are you serious? And I was like, I don't care if you skateboard through college. I really don't. um I want you to go, not just for the academic part, but I think college is a good place
Yep.
to learn to grow up. I didn't
Yep.
go away to college. I always wanted to go away to college. So I feel like college is, it's that place in between being an adult and being a
Yep.
kid. It's 4 years where you get to kind of figure out who you are and what you want to do in a safe space.
Yep.
And I think that you might not know what you want to do for a career, but it's definitely going to teach you the discipline of doing your own laundry, of getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning, of what your responsibilities are, of living away from home, of trying new food, of meeting new people. I notice behaviors and patterns in people that have lived away. And I see it. They're always punctual, for one. You know what I mean? It's true, because they have a discipline, right? And they've always traveled by themselves or done things, or have friends that they've met. So I try to tell people, like, it's not just about going for the academic portion of it. While that's important, yes, and you don't want to waste your money if you don't know what you want to do, I understand. But it's also about having a safe space to grow and learn who you are in a different environment. And for some people, that's the only way they're going to leave where they are.
Yep. And even I tell my kids and my students now, it's like, oh, I don't want to go to college. What's your plan? What's the plan? What's the plan? What we doing? What's the plan? We starting a business? What's the plan? We doing this coding internship? Like, what's the plan? Like, come on, right? Because, right, like, and I have like advisees, right? And folks tell me that all the time. I was like, bro, I've been with you for 4 years. I'm damn near your daddy.
Right.
We ain't leaving this place if you don't got no plan. You like what are we doing? Like, so I was like, no, what's your plan? Right? Is it entrepreneurship? Okay. I'm about to introduce you to some entrepreneurs in your field that you can like shadow for a year. Right? Like, what is it? Right? Because if you don't have any plan, then I have a plan for you. It's college. You're going. Right? Well, my mother, I don't care what your mother say. Care? Like, bro, like, you don't have I know what happens to Black boys when they leave high school and they don't have a plan or they don't have anything. The world has a plan for them. It's not cute. Right? So
it's either you push or you get pushed.
Yeah. And I tell them, like, all the time, like, I'm on them. Like, that's only, like, honestly, the reason why I'm still here, to see my kids go to college. I'm like, I'm on you, right? And Yeah, we just need to do better, right? And we can do better, but it's gonna have to look differently. And I think really what we need to do is right now, this is education right now,
Mhm.
right? This is not inside the school. The best education doesn't happen inside the school. So it's like, how do we get kids to commit to this virtual space? How do we take our intellectual property? How do we take the things that we know and form collaborations like this so we can get our students the things we need, right? I think for Black folks, we really need to look at this virtual space and really take advantage of it to see the opportunities. Because right now, you can send your kid to a free program for all kids who are Black and brown, K to 12 in California, and you can be in New York, right? Like there's programs out there, right? Harvard was getting free classes. Some of my kids are in Harvard right now taking poetry classes, right? University of Virginia, right? And even while kids are home, I'll tell kids are home and they're doing college. That college lesson is not just for the kid. That's the household college lesson. That's the household degree. Everyone could be on that one thing in the Zoom, learning what they need to learn, right?
Yep.
So it's like that type of stuff. Like we gotta understand, like we have to embrace this communal economics, this communal knowledge. And I think we really have to think about the virtual space. Parents can come together, find a few educators, right? Get some grants for the government and start their own virtual homeschools. Like it could be done, right? So,
I said
yeah,
it needs to be done.
and it is being done just in small parts, but I think that if we were really going to transform education, even if we do think of a hybrid model, the hybrid model can't be, oh, the school's going to teach you on the computer and the school's going to teach you in school. No, it's like, okay, you can go to school, but I have something for you on the computer that you're going to do at home. I'm going to see you the program. So I really think when folks are listening, how do you capitalize off to the virtual space to make it better for your kids, right? There's free coding classes, like there's everything on the internet, y'all. Like there's everything here, but like where the schools don't have the resources and things of that nature, you can find the resources and the opportunities on the internet. And if you don't know where to go, you can find where to go. You know how easy it is to DM Educator on Instagram and just ask them some questions. This is so easy. Like, I mean, parents email me on Instagram like, hey, do you know? I'm like, yeah, here. And I think even parents like need to embrace social media, not as an aspect of like, maybe not in the social media, that's cool. But when it comes to opportunities, when it comes to looking at things, you have to embrace this digital space.
Right.
Even if it's just for opportunities.
Yeah, use it to our advantage, use it to network, use it to grow and expand. I totally agree with you. I think I think everything is there in the making. We just have to go get it.
Yep.
We just have to go get it. Well, thank you so much, Rakim, for gracing me with your presence. You have to come back. And we do some more teacher talk. I think we tapped into a lot of different things, but I hope that all the parents listening feel like, okay, I got some gems and I know what to go home and do. I need to talk to my child. I need to see what's online. I need to look for resources. I need to save $50 every 2 weeks. I need to look at the diversity in the school when I send my child to school. So I think that we covered a lot of things where we can begin to have those conversations. And I hope that everybody walks away with that. Tell everybody what you have coming up and where they can find you.
So on Instagram, you can find me on Insightful Teacher. I do have a YouTube page, Insightful Teacher. Like everything's in Insightful Teacher. I have the Revolutionary Educator Conference coming up this week. Is with Principal Ra, Dame Dash, and the OSG family. So we're doing a Revolutionary Educator Conference. I have some clubhouses coming up. You can find everything on Instagram. And I'll be on 2 Educator Conference in April. One Liberated Ed. In April, that'll be on my Instagram, and I'm keynoting for the Identity Talk, Staying True to the Teachers and You, April 16th and 19th. So every Tuesday, I do Insightful Teacher Tuesdays on IG Live, and every Sunday, the Sunday sermon I have everything, Insightful Teacher, like merged, like the whole thing. And I really believe that if we can form education outside of schools, we can move our people back to their historical greatness. And I'm here. I'm very accessible.
I'm very proud. I'm very,
So
very
thank you.
proud. I think
Thank
is
you.
I just think you're amazing, and the work that you're doing is amazing, and the growth has been amazing. And when I see your picture, I don't in my head you my friend, so I see your picture now and the keynote stuff. I'll be like, look. I'm a fan. I'm a fan. I'm a fan.
Like,
Thank you
yes,
so
yeah.
much. Hold on.
Thank